All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Cowlitz County Severe Weather Shelter training. Our fiscal sponsor and our staffing partner has changed this year. We are very grateful for all the work Love Overwhelming has done. And now we are working with Cowlitz Family Health Center. They have been a longtime ally and supporter of the shelter, and we're really, really grateful to them for moving into this role. Nick and I and Pastor Beth and Dexter are part of the Kelso Longview Ministerial Association, the KLMA. It's not going to be the last time you probably hear that acronym. But basically, the Cowlitz Family Health Center provides the fiscal sponsorship and some of the background administrative support for us. And then the KLMA works with volunteers like you. We try to hold fundraisers to make sure that the shelter is funded. And then we just kind of fill in the cracks wherever needed with shelter to make sure that we're able to operate. So before we get into more nuts and bolts, I wanted to share our mission. Our mission is that no person would die outside in the winter because they lacked a place to come inside. It's really that simple. We are very grateful for a number of shelters in the community, and we are committed here to serving the people who often get screened out of those shelter environments because of our conviction that every single human being, regardless of their incarceration history, regardless of their recovery status, regardless of their immigration status, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, is a beloved child of God who deserves a place to be warm and to be connected to community. That is the whole reason that we are here. We believe that if there's any member of our community anywhere that is hurting, it hurts all of us. So this is in our self-interest, our mutual interest to take care of each other and weave together a community of support. So that is the reason that we are doing this today. Pass it over to Holly.
Well, hello everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces, which is great, and some new faces as well. The first thing we're going to go over is kind of an outline of what it looks like for operations here at this shelter. We have our kitchen volunteers usually arrive first. At 4:30 we get our main course meal from the Salvation Army. They donate our main course every night. Even on the weekends, they just deliver it to us on Friday, so that's at about 4:30. And between 5 and 6 o'clock is when our kitchen volunteers arrive to start heating everything up and getting everything ready to be served. Our kitchen volunteers usually enter through the back door. All other volunteers enter through the front. But we like all the volunteers to sign in at the front desk so that we know who's here in case we can't find someone, which has never happened, but we just want to know who's here and who's not here at all times. Between 6 and 7 o'clock is when the rest of the volunteers start arriving. We open the doors at 7 o'clock for people to come in. Sometimes 6:30 if it's cold and people are standing in line. We let them know that dinner's not being served till 7, but that's when we serve the dinner. And then between 7 and 9 we do intake dinner, which is a really good time for people that are volunteering to kind of engage and interact with people, build their relationships with people, just having conversations. And then at 10 o'clock we have lights out. So we turn all the lights off except for these back ones. We keep those on in case people want to sit at the table, they're not ready to go to sleep, play on their phones. We bring coloring books sometimes, have people color, do fun activities like that. Then everyone sleeps, and at 5 a.m. usually Joe comes in and starts doing breakfast, and which is really good. Sometimes we have other volunteers coming to do breakfast. And then at 6 o'clock the bus arrives to start getting people back to camp, which is usually where our bus goes to and from, is just the camp right now. We do have other people that access shelter from other spots, but they generally walk to the shelter. And then at 6:45, we try to get everyone out the door to follow our good neighbor policy to have everybody outside the 5-block radius by 7. We then have usually pastors come, and between 7 and 9 is when you do security. So if you see someone parked outside and it looks like a pastor, they're usually parked over here on the corner. Not the corner, but between
the two schools.
The two schools, and they usually have a sign on their window that says shelter security, just to make sure that everybody that has access shelter is getting out of the 5-block radius. Yeah, so we almost always have at least 2 people in the kitchen at night, and in the mornings, I'm not sure, Joe has at least Joe and sometimes another person Then we have our one volunteer from midnight to 5 a.m. But in the opening shifts, in the closing shift, there's usually 2. And the more volunteers we get to sign up, the more volunteers we can have. We can always have 2 in the middle of the night
Right.
as well, but we just need to have more volunteers signing up for those hours.
And all of that is minimums.
Yes.
So that's our minimum threshold in order to be open and operating safely. Having more is always great, but we've also, that is based on experience of operating the shelter. And anytime we've ever had issues where we've needed intervention or we've needed multiple staff members to be dealing with a guest, it's always before lights out or after people wake up in the morning. Those evening hours are always very quiet. People are sleeping. Even the folks who get up and move around, they go out, and typically they go out to smoke a cigarette and they come back in and go back to sleep. So that's the majority of our guests are very quiet in the night, even if they are awake. So our issues tend to be those times when we already have a lot of people on hand, because we know those is when our issues tend to be. So
Yes. Shelley?
Yes, what is your capacity at night?
Nick?
yeah, so the capacity of the building is 192. So the fire marshal has said that we can have that many people if we needed to. We don't have that many beds. I think we have 30 some odd beds. And so when we go beyond the number of mattresses we have, and we have a few more mattresses in the storeroom.
We do.
So if we have a lot of people come, but when we get past what we have available for mattresses, people sit in the chairs, they sit up against the wall. The most people I think we've had stay overnight in the 3 years we've been doing this is somewhere in the 70 range. And that is a lot of people, but it's almost smoother with that many people, because everyone knows that because that's when the nights are really cold.
Snow.
Those are the nights where it's the worst, and so people kind of all band together because they know it's really bad and nobody wants to jeopardize this. And that's honestly, most of our guests who come here know that this is something that we do because we're able to put it together, and they don't want to jeopardize that. They know that this is the only option, so they're not going to do things that jeopardize that. And also, partly having a church involved is helpful for a lot of people. Not that they necessarily they might have their own traumas related with religion, but there is a certain level of respect that comes with churches and pastors.
So when you walked in, the fenced area is where we have people put their bikes. No bikes are supposed to come inside. I also forgot to tell you that people that bring their belongings, which this is stuff staff will deal with, is sometimes they have a lot of belongings. We just let them bring in what they can fit inside of a tote. We also have everybody use the shelter blankets, not their own personal blankets, and we purposely do not have pillows. So if you think that someone needs a pillow, I agree that everyone needs a pillow, but we don't have pillows. And we just use the shelter blankets. We don't ever use any personal blankets.
This is to protect the shelter site from parasites like bed bugs and lice and all that kind of stuff.
When people enter shelter, they know that once they're in here, they can go outside to the courtyard, but they're not allowed to leave the fenced area. If they leave the fenced area, they're not allowed to come back in for the night.
So people can come into the shelter if they are drunk or high, as long as they are not a harm to themselves or other people. They cannot bring drugs into the facility. We have a strict no drug and no alcohol policy. However, if someone is drunk or high, but they are not a harm to themselves or others, we want to find a way for them to be here and to be safe. Because also the alternative is that they are wandering around the community in that state, right?
And they're sleeping in a bush when it's 25 degrees outside.
It's a good question.
Yeah, so we're considered a low barrier in terms of access because we want to make sure that people can be safe. And part of that is oftentimes the folks who are in that state come in, cuddle up on a blanket, and sleep the whole night. They're sometimes the best guests we get because they don't bother anyone. They just go to bed. Yeah. So, but no, definitely we try, as long as they're being safe for themselves and for others. We would rather them just sleep it off here.
And if you find drug paraphernalia?
Throw it away.
If you find drug paraphernalia as a volunteer, please contact a staff member and they will
Yeah.
dispose of it in the correct manner.
Yeah.
And honestly, what we've seen in the past is that folks who are dealing with addiction issues, if they come in here, they know they have a safe place to be, then relationships develop with them over the course of the season, and it opens up other opportunities for them when they are ready and with their consent, when they are interested in getting connected to other services. And it makes those kind of things possible, which is why we firmly believe in a screening as many people as we can in instead of screening them out, because it actually leads to better outcomes for health and wellness for them and for the community if we do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have the appropriate disposal receptacles for sharps and everything else. When we brought this up when we first started the shelter, we brought it up to the police and said, "What do we do?" And they said, "Just throw it away." As long as no one's going through the trash or anything, like just dispose of it.
We dispose of it in our sharps that you can't get back
and
into.
And the sharps container is a safe CDC approved design, and folks typically don't come here with stuff because they know we don't allow it. So they'll stash it somewhere if they are using, and then they'll come to shelter because this is a safe place. They know they're not supposed to do that, so they don't. Or they use it beforehand and then come. But like I said, when that happens, most of the time they wrap up in a blanket and go to bed. So, yeah. So this year, with our change to Cowlitz Family Health Center as our sponsoring fiscal sponsor, you can write checks to the Cowlitz Family Health Center and put KLMA Shelter in the memo line. Or you can go online to our website. We have a website for the shelter. It's klmasevereweathershelter.org. And there's a place on there to click to donate. And that sends you through, it's actually a Square, Square credit card system that's tied to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. And we collect those funds and then write the check to where that needs to go.
You said that's the key.
But like, how do people know when the shelter's open and when it's not?
So we send an email out to the agencies in town, and we also, so a lot of agencies that are down at camp or just in the area will let people know that we're open.
Okay.
Word travels fast too.
It does.
Yeah.
Does like the website have that?
We also try to post it on the website. Yeah. So just a couple other things before we wrap up today. One thing is we do want to make sure that we honor the privacy of the guests who come. So we don't disclose to people who has been here. If you recognize somebody from some part of your life, you don't tell other people that they've been accessing shelter there, that kind of stuff. We also want to make sure that we don't take pictures or videos with guests in them, particularly not posting them for public view on social media, that kind of thing. It's okay to take a picture of yourself or take pictures of other volunteers if they agree to that. We'll do that sometimes, take pictures of staff or volunteers and use those. And you can do that in the shelter space. Just make sure there aren't guests in those pictures. And that's just a safety thing for them as much as it is for you. And then the last thing is when shelter is done. We are kind of in this weird nebulous zone right now where the shelter closed because it got a little warmer, and then it stayed a little warmer a little longer than we thought it was going to, but now it's getting cold again. So typically when shelter ends, we hold what's called a good neighbor meeting. So we have a list of people we email that we tell them, hey, we've run shelter. We're going to have a meeting. We have told our neighbors that we will do that within 5 business days of the close of shelter. We did send an email out on Thursday to say, hey, shelter is closed, but we are reopening. We expect to reopen within a couple days, so we are not going to do a good neighbor meeting, and within 5 days we're going to count this kind of as one shelter time. But if you have concerns or questions in the interim, They know what our email is. We also have a shelter hotline phone number that they can call if there's issues that need to be immediately addressed. And then Holly has done a great job of coordinating and connecting with the preschool, has reached out to the school, has talked to the school district. So those folks who are right here on top of us are aware. And then we also have connections to some of our neighbors through other means, and make sure that they're aware of what we're doing. So we do those good neighbor meetings, and we typically schedule those in the afternoons. Like I said, within 5 days of the close of shelter. We invite volunteers to be part of that, to share your experience of volunteering, and to just be a helpful voice in that if you are interested.
On Zoom.
And all the meetings are on Zoom, so.